In the beginning, the game started. This was followed by a very long alpha test, a comparatively lengthy beta period, and a few thousand years of general criticism after the official launch of the main game. So after all this time of moderation changes and balance patches, many are left to wonder about the current state of the IRL game. In general, most players would agree that the game is in the healthiest state it's ever been, with administrators now prioritizing the quest lines of players, as opposed to pursuing aggressive takeovers of other servers. However, this isn't always the case, with many admins delegating moderation roles to close friends, as opposed to the most qualified candidates. Clan rivalries have also become largely more friendly, with players being much less likely to resort to PvP combat upon disagreement. With this in mind, many would argue that there is still too much player-on-player combat in certain servers, with players who spec into high knowledge builds, speculating that there is no end in sight. Although clan rivalries are not necessarily confined to any particular server, and even some of the most developed and prosperous portions of the map find it difficult to stay united. This has left many players to question whether such a strong sense of clan identity has made the entire moderation process far less effective when all players are ultimately playing the same game. This kind of divide has often led to higher complaints of player toxicity, although it has widely been accepted that trying to mute general chat is not healthy for the overall player base. Many players would question whether the systems of moderation should even be used at all, with accusations of pay to win, hacking, and imitation all being used to describe some of the higher level members of the moderation team. Although previous public test servers have led many to believe that there are too many bugs and balance issues in more extreme forms of moderation. With all this considered, players currently enjoy the fastest rate of content updates in the game's lifetime, with it only being 66 years between the discovery of the flight skill and the first player to jump worlds entirely. Of course, like every other game, players will always find something to complain about, and in this case, a portion of the player base feel that these updates simply come too quickly. Although, with this fast pace, many players have become skeptical of new game mechanics they don't understand, with many turning to more traditional ways of living and healing. However, many players have criticized these choices, as it has often led to spread unwanted debuffs to other players, or straight up spawn killing. In one of the more recent updates, social media was invented, and now connects and shapes the lives of billions of the more fortunate player base. Unfortunately, this has led to many unforeseen concerns about the value of player privacy, the real danger of extreme division over the echo chamber effect, and the difficult to detect threat of malicious social engineering. However, one of the biggest complaints is the game's pay-to-win nature and too many RNG elements, with many players unhappy with the randomized stats that they were given. The cost of increasing these stats is also considered to be fairly grindy, expensive, and for many less fortunate players, entirely impossible. Although in this strange new shift to a more interconnected player base, many players are able to exploit the game's systems to generate vast quantities of premium currency out of seemingly nothing. But we should discuss what we can expect from the game going into the future. This type of guesswork often strongly divides the player base, but there are a few ideas for future updates that seem the most likely. The game world is speculated to become much warmer over the next few decades, which has largely contributed to the slow adoption of more efficient energy sources on the tech tree. The impact of this is not yet certain, with results ranging from permanent discomfort to a complete server wipe. In any case, it is doubtful that anyone would want to deprive new members of the player base of a world that is capable of so much beauty and triumph. These concerns have become so large that some of the most intelligent and well-supplied players have taken it upon themselves to make a fan-made space colony DLC, the results of which have not yet come to pass. However, likely only the most maxed out and least toxic players will have the opportunity to try this exciting expansion. High intelligence players are also expecting to see an increase in the use of bots. Previously nothing more than a tool to automate tedious player inputs, the game world is already seeing startlingly fast improvements in how quickly they can improvise, adapt, and overcome tasks faster than other players. These bots in particular have sparked many concerns, with it being predicted that they will take a staggeringly high amount of jobs, be frequently abused to sway public opinion, and perhaps make human characters as a whole entirely irrelevant. Some players have even gone on to say that the entire game is likely to see a balance shift, and that human players have simply been a short-term bootloader for future immortal artificial intelligence. This again remains to be seen. On a less terrifying note, the capitalism DLC has brought across several new innovations, and with a trend of more subscription-based monetization models, it wouldn't be impossible to believe that players will end up with dozens of new subscriptions for transportation, housing, domestic services, and even sustenance items, along with the already prevalent entertainment side activities. The corporate factions who manage to corner these services will likely become some of the richest entities to ever exist. However, this will be minuscule in comparison to inevitable space mining that will most certainly become the most profitable industry to ever be invented. This does however raise some questions around whether corporate factions already have too much power and influence when it comes to moderator decisions, especially when considering the much higher likelihood of less ethical factions to prosper and the rise of super factions that already hold more resources than many of the smaller servers. With everything considered, players are still not sure what the end game is really supposed to be, although many have concluded that players can set their own quest lines, and their goals are entirely down to personal preference. Some players find joy in artistic perfection, others seek to explore every server, and many players simply want to find the most efficient way to farm currency. Ironically, poor players often have a need to spend their premium currency on cosmetic items, while the wealthy frequently find joy in min-maxing their spending habits. Regardless of the self-imposed quest lines, the main and ultimate goal is player enjoyment, so as long as this objective has been achieved, players can be certain that they've pursued a worthy quest line. The question of why the game exists at all is something that not even the highest intelligence players have been able to answer. Many have speculated that the game was created by a kind of omnipotent developer, and that by demonstrating these beliefs, they will secure their beta access to the sequel when their own playtime has ended. These beliefs have often led to a lot of large-scale PvP battles over the characteristics and values of such a powerful entity. However, most rational players can no longer justify killing another player for such a disagreement, and that if there is an all-knowing developer, they will come in one of two categories. The first will reward non-toxic behavior and will judge players purely on their kindness and compassion stats. The second developer will have stopped caring about the game entirely, or only reward players who worship the already cloudy interpretation of themselves. Ultimately, this second developer is not worth supporting, so players who help each other and avoid becoming toxic will always be in the greatest position, regardless of the unclear reality. Ultimately, this is the game we are all playing. As a player base, we have been prone to wars, toxicity, and even near mutually assured destruction, but we have also managed to achieve so much collective good for the world. We've wiped out countless diseases, demonstrated an almost unwavering capacity for compassion, and we've proven time and time again that if we are able to stay united, we are only limited by how ambitious we choose to become.